Welcome, everybody. This is Avoiding the Addiction Affliction, and I'm Mike McGowan. This is brought to you by Westwards Consulting, the Kenosha County Substance Use Disorder Coalition, and by a grant from the state of Wisconsin's Dose of Reality Real Talks, reminding you that opioids are powerful drugs and that one pill can kill. Relationships don't always work out as well as we'd like. Okay. And if you're listening to this and yours did, well, tune out. We don't need you. When the issue is infidelity, Helen Fisher, my guest today, helps couples heal the pain of betrayal and rebuild trust, intimacy, and deep emotional connection. We're going to talk about infidelity and the other forms of betrayal and the effects on the individual and the relationship. Helen is an Illinois based licensed clinical professional counselor with a master's in marriage and family therapy and advanced training in emotionally focused couples therapy, as well as advanced training in sex therapy and substance abuse. As always, we'll put a link to Helen's connections on our blurb. Welcome, Helen. I'm so glad to see you.
I'm so happy to be here, Mike. Thanks for having me.
It's so good. This is one of those topics where I try to prepare what I'm going to say, but there's so many things we could talk about first that it's almost like infidelity in a way. Let's get to it. You say on your webpage that when betrayed, it feels like your whole world has been shattered, right?
Yes.
So the emotions and the thoughts are just overwhelming. So my first question is, how do you even know where to start?
So it's difficult. When faced with infidelity, it's a relational trauma. It's an attachment trauma that happens. What I find is that the way people respond to infidelity or finding that they have been betrayed, it's almost as if they had a near-death experience. So it's hard in that state to know where to begin because your limbic system has been hijacked. You can't eat, you can't sleep, you can't think, it's hard to work. What I would say is where I would begin to start, if you can begin to slowly breathe life back into your body a little bit, find some grounding. Because you're going to need to make some decisions. You need to be able to think straight at some
Hmm.
point. And it's hard to do that when you're hijacked. One of the first things I would say, there's a lot of don'ts and there's a lot of do's, but one of the first things I would say, at least can we figure out, do we want to try to fix this? That's the first thing do we want to try to fix this? Is your other partner ready to give up their other relationship? Because from there, then we can figure out a path forward. But
Those are
I
two
would
separate
try.
questions, though, right?
Yeah,
Do we want to do, if somebody comes to you, do you want to fix it? And then the second question is, do they?
yeah. I would before we even dive into any kind of therapy. It was interesting. I had a couple call me and the wife had betrayed. And I asked in the consult call, have you given up your relationship? And she hadn't. And I said, we can't do couples therapy. What are we doing? Unfortunately, I can't. So the first thing we have to figure out, are we willing to both heal from this and move
Mhm.
forward? I would say that's first and foremost.
I would think when somebody comes to you and this has happened, they want to put the cart before the horse. What you just talked about is exactly what I was thinking, that daily living is difficult. Your
Yes.
emotions are so jumbled. You're at work, you're going from rage to depression to all sort of fear to jealousy. And so your first goal, I would think, is slow your butt down, right?
Yes.
But that's not, they want to go, I want to get to Z before I do A, B, and C.
Yes, absolutely. I would say if you have the privilege to take time off work, I would do that. I would definitely do that. If you have the privilege to be able to slow down, because not everybody does, not everybody's in a position to do that. But if you do have the ability to slow down and be by yourself, to write, to get all your emotions out through writing, to breathe, to walk, to connect back into your body somehow. That is so important.
So that's healthy
Yes, yes, yes.
because I can see if I take off work or whatever, I have time. And a lot of people would
Mm.
spend that time obsessing.
Yes. And that's okay. You have to recognize that you're obsessing. If there's a way you can go for a swim. A swim is good because a swim, your body immediately can connect to something, like you can feel something else against your skin. For instance, when it's wintertime, it's a great time. If you're obsessing, if you're anxious, if you're depressed, I would say the wintertime is a great time. You can step out and I say, feel the cold
Mm.
against your skin. Really, truly feel that. Breathe it in if you can. Focus on that. So it's a good time to be able to focus on something external. If you're going for a walk, go touch a tree. And by that, I mean focus on the bark.
Huh.
Focus on the feel of it. It gives you an opportunity to be outside of your head for a little bit. So like you get out of the never-ending circuit that's happening in there. If you're at home, you're sitting on the couch, touch your couch, feel the couch. If you're noticing you're obsessing and you can't seem to stop, what does this pen feel like?
Mm.
I'm holding for those who might not be
Yeah.
seeing this, but like feel the different parts of the pen. Get yourself outside of your head just a little bit. Give your head a little space because you're going to be consumed, just consumed,
Yeah.
which is normal.
Swimming would work for me because I'd be worried about drowning. So that would take care of that. When I've been in years past, when I was going through something, I would run. And that
Yeah.
did much the same thing because you get a point to a point at which you got to let go of everything just to get through the run. I suppose biking, lifting, there's a bunch of different stuff where you just get back in. You're saying just get back into your own body so that you can begin to process your present and future.
Yes. Because you can't truly make a decision. A lot of people want to hurry up and make a decision. Oh,
Correct.
that's it. I'm getting a divorce or
Yeah.
we're going to break up. But you can't make a decision out of that place. I can't tell you how many people they find out and immediate, we're breaking up, we're getting a divorce, and fast forward a month later, oh, hold on, we want to work on it. It happens frequently. But you cannot make a logical decision until you're able to get somewhat grounded. It's impossible. It's impossible.
I want to explore that part in a couple minutes, but I would think that people also have to get over the is it me? That's got to occur to people.
Yes, all the time. That happens all the time. Now, this is very nuanced. What I would say is that you are responsible for co-creating the dynamic in your relationship prior to the affair. Does that make sense?
Yes.
The person who stepped out, now people step out for many different reasons. Again, a whole separate discussion. People step out in happy marriages, unhappy marriages. Their reason for stepping out, that is their responsibility for coping with whatever unhappiness that they are feeling. But the dynamic that was created in your marriage or relationship prior to that affair, that you have responsibility for, but not for the person stepping out. That is how they decided to. They could have dealt with the unhappiness in the marriage, I don't know, by doing drugs, or they could have pushed for you guys to get help. You could have done it a million different ways, but that is one of the ways they decided to cope. That has nothing to do with you.
Yeah,
That is
there's
not your
healthy
fault.
coping mechanisms and there's unhealthy ones. They could have, come
Right.
to you and said, let's go to counseling, let's take a vacation, let's talk this through, instead of going to the casino and gambling away the 2 months house
Sure,
payment and or cheating, right?
sure. But were you doing enough to to be a co-creator of a healthy relationship prior to the affair? Were
And
you
that
talking about your issues? Were you supporting each other?
that's where your work goes then later, right?
Yes, that's like step three in how I work. First, we have to unravel the crisis of it all. And then I'd say down the line, that's one of the primary issues I would work on. Tell me about what your relationship looked like prior to the affair. Were you guys Was there an emotional intimacy between the two of you? Was there a safety? Were we talking about our issues? Were you able to face each other? Were you both carrying resentment and not talking about it? Was there too much conflict and too much contempt? And that wasn't healed.
Do men and women in general have different ways that they come at it? Does jealousy or manifest itself differently depending on who you are?
Are you asking why men and women, their reasons for cheating or their
Yeah,
reasons
I
for
could ask
recovering?
that too, but I would think that they would ask different questions, like about in talking to a lot of men, they would ask different questions, I think, than women would ask. Have you seen the clip on YouTube? There's a clip where a man has an affair, and the woman says, "Is she prettier than me? Is she blah blah blah? Is she this than me?" And he goes, "No, no, no." Well, then why? And he goes, "She's softer than you. She doesn't criticize me all the time." And it just stops her, right? Where men would ask something like, "Does he make more money than me? Is he to talk sex?
They last
Is he better in
longer in
bed than
bed.
me?" You know,
Yeah,
that
yeah, yeah.
jealousy man.
I don't know. I don't know if I've ever paid attention to that. I don't know if I've ever paid attention to that. So, to be honest, a lot of men are less likely to work on their marriage if they have been betrayed. I tend to
Yeah,
see,
I've seen that stat, right?
yes. So I therefore see a lot less couples in my office or work with less couples where it was the female that betrayed the wife if you're in a heterosexual relationship. So I don't know. And by the time they get to my office, that's not the question we're asking.
Stay or go, how does one decide?
Oh, so first and foremost, I would say your first indicator is the person who betrayed. Are they willing to, have they ended the other relationship? That's number one. If they've ended the other relationship, if they're willing to work with you, if they're getting their own help, for instance, if the reason for their betrayal was some kind of out of control sexual behavior or what commonly known as sex addiction, are they getting their own help? So if you're seeing that your partner is willing to get the help, if they're working on it, if they're putting effort in, I would say that's reason enough to stay and give it a try. But if your partner is not, hasn't let go of the other relationship, if they're not willing to get the help, then that's you're not in a good place for recovery. That's not a good place to rebuild trust. So that's where I would decide.
I think another human dynamic is it's all bundled up. Fear, right? Shame, guilt. So where are the boundaries? What do we tell the family, right? What do we tell the kids?
So this is a big one. I say when you find out, do not tell anyone. I'm not a big secret keeper and I'm not pushing for holding on to secrets. I would say pick one person that you truly feel like has your back to talk to. I think that is important to some degree. Choose one person outside of your marriage to go to and to talk to who will support you. There's an instinct when somebody finds out that they've been betrayed, there's an instinct to tell everybody because somebody who's hurt wants to hurt the other. So the intention to tell everyone else comes from a place of wanting to hurt that your partner. And then fast forward, now you want to try to work on the marriage. And it makes it that much harder to work on your marriage because now you have your friends, your cousins, your parents going, "What the hell are you doing?
Mm.
How could you do that when they've done such a thing?" And now you're trying to heal your marriage, and you've got your own parents or siblings or friends, whoever, who are angry at your partner for doing what they did because it's a betrayal. It's almost like a betrayal to them as well. So now it's like extra work on everybody to heal your relationship. It makes it that much more difficult. And I would especially warn against telling your kids because you want to tell your kids because what I hear from other people, I need my kids to know I didn't choose to end our marriage. It's not, I'm not the bad guy. It's what they did. But your kids have a relationship with the other partner too, and that's important. Don't, I would say be careful. What is your intention behind telling others? If it's to hurt, then I would say give that pause.
And also, what are you looking for? We don't in schools give people training in support and empathy. So there's a lot of people that don't know how to respond to stuff like that. And it comes across sometimes as victim blaming, right? Or just it's not helpful.
It's not helpful. It's not helpful, especially when it's infidelity happens in a marriage where there's children. Someone might say to you, you go to a friend who you just go to a friend who's like, "Oh my God, you gotta leave." That's easier said than done.
Yeah.
You've
Mhm.
been in a marriage for 15, 20 years, you've got kids, you've got a whole life you've built together. That's not so easy. So I would say be please before you go, when you ask, what do you do? You found out they, what do you do? One of the first things I'd say, do not tell everybody. The first thing, do not, no matter how much you want to, do not go telling everybody right out the gate. Hold on. Hold on. Choose one person who you trust with your life who would have your marriages back. Do you know what I mean? Who would,
Yes, that's an interesting comment. Have your marriages back.
yes, someone who would get it, why you would choose to stay if you choose to stay. Someone who would not push you out.
People are people and they have intense curiosity. So I would imagine another question you have to deal with is how much information? What does somebody need to know? This is probably a poor term, sorry. What does the non-offending partner need to know? Because they want to know maybe too much, or where do we come in with full
They
disclosure,
want
partial disclosure? Like, how often did you do that? Where did you do it? When, how?
Esther Perel, she's a great couples therapist and she focuses on infidelity. And she talks about how all these little questions are, it's like a death by a million paper cuts. It is brutal. I would say you don't need to know how many times you've had sex. It's irrelevant. Your partner stepped out on you. That's enough. Do you need to know whether they're in love? That's probably important. Do you need to know what positions they did it in? Absolutely not. Do you need like all that nitty-gritty? Absolutely not. And I would say here's the problem because when you start to ask all these detailed questions, you create these visions in your head,
Yes.
and it's something that will keep re-traumatizing you because now you have a clear vision or a picture. Oh, you did it in this position that I didn't like for us to do, or you did it this many times, or you did it in that hotel, and that hotel then becomes a trigger. And then now every time you drive by that hotel, or you went to that restaurant and you did that thing and you took them to that same spot we used to go to. Yeah, all of those things then become a trigger and a pain point. There are certainly important questions that need to be asked. But I also say, hold on, write them out. Write those questions out and let's address them in couples therapy, perhaps if you're there. And let's see what is the intention behind that question? What are you looking to know? Will this question help eventually heal your marriage? Or is this going to be a question that will re-traumatize you moving forward?
What do you find? I can see you there with a red pen like a teacher. Nope, we don't need to ask that. We don't need to ask that. What are the helpful questions that you need to know?
Were you thinking of me? Did you think about me? How did you reconcile coming home? When you came home and you looked in my eyes, how did you reconcile that within yourself?
Whoa.
I know.
Oh, and
That's
wow. If you ask that, then what do you get back? What do you get back?
I compartmentalize.
Yeah.
That was out there. My relationship with that person was out there, and this was my life at home. And I shut that down. I disconnected from that as I walked in through the door. Or if I
Because
felt guilt, I rationalized it. I deserve this.
because if I'm there, I'm speaking for me, and I get the answer, I did think about you, and I did it anyway. That's a different answer than I compartmentalized it, right? Because then it's like, where are we going?
Yeah,
If you
yeah.
are thinking about me and I don't matter that much.
Or there's a lot of different answers. I did think about you, and there was a major internal struggle for me. I've been living in a place of guilt. I've been living in a place of never-ending guilt. And I've been wanting to end that relationship, and I couldn't. I got stuck. Now, there's a lot there, but that's much more, that's a different question that gets to the depth of things than how many times did you do it? You did it. That's it. It's been one time or 20 times. At this point, it's relevant. It's been done.
I was going to ask this a little bit later, but there's other forms of betrayal, right? I mentioned it before, going to the casino and gambling away the family funds or substance abuse. And I'm thinking about the questions you're asking. Those are all forms of betrayal. When you were at the bar, were you thinking about the family? Were you thinking about us? When you're at the poker table, were you thinking about us? Why does it in my head, I would think people forgive those things much more readily than sexual infidelity.
I don't know. I don't know. It's such a different kind of infidelity. And I treat it very differently. If you think about, for instance, let's talk about sex addiction, or I, as sex therapists now, have coined it out of control sexual behavior. So, for instance, let's just say you've been going to like massage parlors with happy endings. You've been doing that for the last 6 months, or strip clubs, or whatever, but it's not necessarily like the way that you've betrayed. It's not another relationship. It's through this. It's like a out of control sexual behavior. And that requires your own separate treatment. What was going on for you that you stepped out in this way? Or what were you seeking? What are you healing, right? So that person needs to seek their own treatment, 100%. And I would recommend groups. There's a lot of great group therapy for people who struggle with this. The way What's different about this moving forward and healing together. So, for instance, if you've betrayed once with another partner and perhaps you fell in love and now ended that relationship, the likelihood that you'll cheat again, it's minimal. It's as long as you work on your relationship and you heal whatever it is needed to be healed, the likelihood that you'll step out again, it's not as likely. But when we're working with something like addiction, out of control sexual behavior, the likelihood that you'll probably watch porn again, if you've had difficulty watching, you're watching hours and hours of porn a day, or you're going to these massage parlors like 10 times a week, the likelihood that you'll relapse is very likely. So then we're working on how do we deal with those relapses when they happen, because that's relapse is a part of treatment. It just is more times than not. So then, are you going to step out, or are you going to leave the marriage then? Or is it something that you're going to work through? So we have to relapse is something then we have to talk about. So yeah, it's a very different treatment process, but sure, it's very much a betrayal. It's a secret. Then how do we define it? It's a secret that there's some part about you your partner does not know. You're leading a whole other life that your partner's not clued into.
So the natural question is, how do you then eventually go about rebuilding trust? How long does that take? And I guess I would think it's further down in the continuum. How do you regain intimacy?
So first, what's interesting? I deal with both kinds of couples where sex is completely off the table, or they have start having sex immediately and it's the hottest sex they've ever had. Both. Because because now that like there's this like it comes from a place of like uh there's this like chasm or distance that's been created in our relationship, and it creates this like extra layer of passion now, like now. Or it's the other way too, where don't touch me, you're go sleep in the other room. So trust is an interesting one, and this is where I struggle with the most, and that with couples. And I would say trust does not become part of the conversation until we're about a year in, where, oh my God, for us to move forward and have this healthy relationships, it's like I feel like I have to jump out of this plane now. Like now I have to jump out of this plane and let go and trust. So trust happens over time. And the person who did the betraying gets really frustrated because they feel like, well, I've admitted all the things. I'm going to couples therapy. I keep telling you where I'm at all times. I don't get it. Why don't you trust me? And here's how I explain it. And this is Brene Brown. This is her thing. So I stole it from her and I love it. Imagine you had a huge jar filled with marbles, huge jar filled with marbles, which represents the trust between the two of you. A betrayal has been discovered. All the marbles are gone from this jar, all of them. The jar is completely empty. And so let's just say that as you're working on your relationship and rebuilding trust, so let's just say that you're willing to sit down and have a conversation with your partner. You're the one who's betrayed, and you're willing to have this conversation openly without any defense. That's one marble that's now being put back in that jar. One marble. So that means you have to have 50,000 more of those conversations. That means you have to commit to couples therapy weekly. That means that every little step you take toward rebuilding the marriage, that's one marble that gets added to the jar. So that's where people get surprised. But I told them this, and why don't they believe me? Because you've only added one marble in that one move, you added one marble. And in order for there to be trust, there needs to be a lot of marbles. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of marbles back in this jar.
And then I would imagine for the other person, right? How do you keep from keeping those arrows in the quiver and firing them out months, years later, even in small little barbs at family functions that nobody knows what you're talking about, you know? Like you got to
First,
keep your a governor on your own stuff, otherwise you can take a marble out.
so I would say if you've been genuinely working at it for a few years and you're still dealing with trust, you're never going to forget. Let's just, you're never going to forget. But if you don't forgive, and if you're still having a hard time fully putting yourself and your heart back into the relationship, it's a risk. I'm not saying it's not a risk. It's a risk. No matter what, it's a risk. And 100% trust is never guaranteed. And I know this, it's very scary. It is very scary. But if you feel like you're not capable of doing that or that's too hard, it's going to impact your relationship moving forward. So if what you want is a healthy relationship moving forward, where you can give to one another, where there's compassion, there's empathy, there's trust, there's intimacy, there's safety, then you would have to really be willing to let go of that resentment and begin to trust.
And
That
people can
takes
do that
years.
though, right?
People can do that. People can do that, and that's co-created. People can absolutely do that, and I've seen it. It's a
Now,
beautiful thing.
I'll let you go with this. That has to be rewarding when you see somebody moving for in one direction or another, somebody moving forward, regaining self-worth, improving a relationship.
So here's the thing. People always ask me, how can you work with infidelity? That's so, like, how can you deal with such high conflict couples? It's hard. Believe me, it's hard. There's a lot of emotion in that room. But I tell you what, I have seen a number of couples come in, they're in a state of crisis and betrayal, and all the emotions get brought up to the surface, and it's a mess. And there's tears, and there's yelling, and just visceral pain. And it's the first time that couples are able to really talk to one another. It's the first time they're facing themselves, they're facing each other. And it's through those conversations, it's through that pain. I don't recommend it. Don't go having an affair to do this. I don't recommend it. But
There's other ways to get there.
oh God, there's better ways of getting there. I Couples, when they get to the other side, they will say to me, my God, this is such a different relationship than whatever the hell we had before the affair.
Yeah.
I see myself differently. I see us differently. I see them differently. We have conversations we've never had before. We're going into depths we've never gone before. This feels different now. It feels real. Now it feels intimate.
A-
That's such a rewarding thing to see.
And I would also think that even if they split, if they go through that process with somebody who's skilled and trained, your next relationship, because we're going to have one,
Mhm.
has a better potential of being healthy because you now know.
If you worked through it, you definitely don't want to walk, especially if you're the one that's been betrayed. You want to make sure that you still work through that
Yeah,
pain.
do the work, right?
Yeah, do the work, re work on that because your self-esteem is going to get impacted. Your sense of self-worth is going to get impacted. Make sure you do the work before you step into another relationship. But even if you decide to split, that's people will sit on that for years too. Oh, should we end it? Should we end the pain of sitting on that for years? On that fence is it's brutal. And but once you make that decision to end and move forward, at least now you have a path and you get off that fence and you can begin to breathe again. It's not easy. That's
Yeah.
also not easy.
No, I lied to you. I said I would end it with that, but you made me think of one more thing because I think a lot of people don't do what you just said. They try to regain their self-worth by jumping into another relationship like that. And we hear it over and over again. It's the same dynamic, right? So I would think you would say, slow yourself down. You got to work on yourself.
When I'm working with someone who's going through a divorce, or my friends, even some of my friends, and I look at people and I go, please do not jump into bed with anyone. This is in recovery too. This is the same thing in recovery. They tell you don't make big decisions, don't get into new relationships for a year, right? Same thing with divorce, or you've ended this major relationship. But divorce especially, do not get into another relationship for at least a year. Let yourself recover. Give yourself some breathing room. And 9 times out of 10, people don't listen because they don't, because people are people. People are human and they are dying for that connection and they want to be validated and they feel like they want to be seen and understood and have that touch and feel desired and wanted. We all want to be wanted. It's such a natural thing. And 9 times out of 10, if you have gone into bed or stepped into a relationship within, let's just say 6 months or a few months of divorce, it's, I don't know if it's terrible because you're like almost trauma bonding or you're connecting to someone else from this empty place in you, from a very unhealed place. So you're going to connect to someone who will feed off of that. And it's 9 times out of 10, that's not healthy.
Okay, let's do part two. Let's do another one a couple months from now called avoiding trauma bonding because I like that. Very good.
Yeah.
Mhm. Listen, this is a hard conversation, a very interesting dynamic. Helen, you're terrific. Thank you so much for doing this with us. And for those of you who are listening and watching, we appreciate you doing that. This is not an easy topic to talk about, especially if you're going through it, but we really appreciate you hanging in there. We hope if you're listening and watching that you're safe, that you're well. And I think we would like to say if you're going through stuff, slow it down, take care of yourself.
Yes.